United to fend off Badoon incursions into the Vega system, a planetary fortress was established on a strategic world and named the Citadel. The first allies were the Okarans and the Branks, who united under a hybrid leader known as the Progenitor. The Citadel then annexed the Gordanians, the Spider Guild, the Changralinians, the Scions, and Euphorics. However, everyone gangster until the Progenitor dies from a genetic defect. Sedentary, the Citadel began experiencing terrorist strikes and guerrilla rebellions. Desperate, the military endowed an artificial intelligence with the mind of the Progenitor, the complex. That sounds really, really complex. However, insurgents were endowed with the one skill the Citadel lacked: improvisation. Enter hapless huckster Harry Hokum, an Earthling evicted from Uranus. Hokum sold himself as an interstellar strategist. The funny thing was, he was good at it. Hokum remodeled the Citadel from offensively to defensively. Like Eastern Rome, the Citadel adopted a theme system, and like America, advertising was weaponized. All he needed to advertise were the ideal boogeymen. Better yet, Omega Men. 1981, New York City. Ed Koch was re-elected mayor. A new disease was reported, and two little runaways met outside a Greyhound bus station. Tyrone Johnson suffered a stutter and poor eyesight that impaired his self-esteem. Tandy Bowen cut herself due to abuse in a gilded cage. Tyrone went on the run as he witnessed his friend's murder by police. Tandy was wanted for the wire theft necessary to escape her abusive parent. When self-appointed vigilantes assumed Tandy was a hooker and Tyrone was a disability grift, the duo ran for their lives. Taking shelter in a derelict church, the two conserved their money by scavenging for supplies. In time, the shy Tyrone and the sparkling Tandy became the siblings the other never had. However, the two friends were targeted by human traffickers at a Salvation Army soup kitchen. They were sold to the orphanage, a subcontractor for the Department of Extranormal Operations. The duo was placed inside boxes stolen from Equinox, the in-betweener. Tandy and Tyrone were the only survivors of the experiment. Tandy became an avatar of Master Order, endowed with the white light of life itself. Tyrone became an avatar of Lord Chaos, endowed with the dark force of death herself. Tandy could hurl daggers of healing light. Tyrone could wave a cloak of grave cold darkness. Many a tale from those once on the NYC streets tells of the kindness and vengeance of Cloak and Dagger. And what became of the Child of Darkness and the Child of Light? Somewhere between night and day, Cloak and Dagger slipped away quietly, sight unseen to history. 1974, New York City. A subterranean laboratory clandestinely experiments on potential superheroes. An off-the-books site commissioned by the GPA and operated by Tyler Chemo Robotics. Command D invents the soldiers of the future. 1993. Abner Dunson offered Gulf War veteran Alex Ellis an experimental cybernetic leg. Unbeknownst to Alex, the neuroimplants could overwrite his personality. Dunson chose to model the overriding personality after his late son, David. As Annex, Alex was more adaptable to trauma and more commanding in presence. With a cybernetic exoskeleton, Annex was a regular one-man army corps. 1994. Susie Endo was the director of cybernetics at Tyler Chemo Robotics. When the Golden Claw attacked to retrieve Chang Tzu's corpse, Endo was interfaced with said corpse. The severing rendered her peripheral nervous system damaged. With her death faked, Susie was taken to Command D, where she adapted Tzu's nervous system for herself. Consequently, this nervous system exhibited Tzu's transceiver powers. As Cybermancer, no satellite or Wi-Fi network was safe from Susie Endo. However, Command D was entirely analog in its records and communications. 1995. Detective Alejandro Sanchez narrowly survived an assassination attempt by a serial killer. When he awoke in Command D, Alejandro was greeted by financier Noah Hightower. Sanchez's limbs and peripheral nervous system were now cybernetic. Hightower believed the serial killer who murdered his daughter was the same one who attempted to murder Sanchez. As Firebrand, Alejandro could interface with an experimental AI satellite to unlock abilities and intel. 2018. A Hicktown recruiter needed to make his quota. Enter Elvis Avery, a 98-pound weakling with a below-average IQ. After basic training, Elvis was escorted to Command D, where he was injected with Miraclo. implanted with an artificial nervous system and endowed with a more intelligent personality. When triggered by a fight, flight, or freeze response, Elvis could transform into Damage for exactly 1 hour. Everyone at Command D was gangster until Elvis and Damage became aware of one another and escaped. Worse, Damage could render itself, and Elvis, invisible to all electronic surveillance. Cue that sad hitchhiker music. Recently, Command D identified a new experimental subject, a corporate nobody at one of its public fronts, an employee at Pseudo People Incorporated by the name of Buddy Blank. Contraxia orbits an eclipsing binary star. Its inhabitants descend from the exiles of Gemworld. Their ancestors were exiled for being followers of Eclipso, the heretical heir of houses Onyx and Diamond. The planet is governed by the Mother Superior, elected by the Sun Priestesses. Eclipso is now worshipped as a binary star. Contraxian society is no longer a cult of personality. And that makes Mother Superior feel like the future is an unsure bet. A breeding and conditioning program has been instituted. Partners across the stars have been vetted. And Project Zero Fluid has been perfected. Around whom will this new cult of personality congregate? Well, it depends on the luck of the draw. Following the Apocalypse War, a global realignment happened among economics, politics, and crime. While most mafia crime syndicates operated black markets for food, medicine, gold, data, and diamonds, lovers Stephen Mandragora and Angora Lapin dealt in salvage. Known as the albino assassins for the defunct 100 crime family, the couple used 2 legitimate fronts as a salvage operation for apocalyptian technology. The venture would anoint the couple as among the midwives of post-apocalyptic capitalism. The couple founded the domestic Bestman Salvage and the foreign Southern Cross Salvage Company. Despite laws demanding all salvage be sold to governments, Stephen and Lapin knew the nations were bankrupt. So they sold salvage at black market auctions. The buyers were global conglomerates specializing in transport, food, communication, housing, energy, and luxury. Known as the Corporation, the black market venture has made decisions on a global basis, supposedly for the common good. So, how much income does the corporation receive? None. It auctions salvage in exchange for shares in the companies. Did I call it the corporation? I meant to call it the corporation. Recently, the corporation has ventured into auctioning inventions from desperate startups. One such startup is Hart Inventions. The founder, Philip Hart, is a subcontractor for Contraxia. Unbeknownst to either the corporation or Contraxia, Hart refined Zero Fluid into the Super Soldier Mutagen to end all Super Soldier Mutagens. On a heartwarming note, Edgar, the son of Mandragora and Lapin, is friends with Hart's son, Jack. Or, don't mess with a master of quack fu. When Thog, a petty hell lord, was overthrown from his splinter realm, he landed in the Animal Lands. While Thog ravaged a film studio, movie stars Bugs and Mickey sought to escape. However, hapless Howard fled through the Nexus instead. Howard landed in New York City and was taken in by aspiring models Beverly Switzler and Dakota North. They got Howard a job as a pitchman for Van Dyne models. Howard thought it would beat a desk job at R. Wachio Construction. He even became a campaign pitchman for the all-night party. Afterward, Howard became the hype man for Beverly's band, Cherry Bomb. While on tour, Howard met Walter Jennings, a quantum physicist researching nexus points. While foraging in Florida for such a nexus, Howard aided Man-Thing in exorcising Jennings of a so-called Dark Overlord. Afterward, Howard joined NASA to promote a joint US-USSR exploratory vessel. On the maiden voyage, an SOS was received via a wormhole. However, astronaut Stacy Macklin and cosmonaut Valentina Vostok dueled to steal the ship for exclusive first contact rights. In the process, Howard was accidentally jettisoned. Fortunately, he was rescued by the person who transmitted the SOS, Cosmo, an evolved canine cosmonaut. The lonely canine was launched through said wormhole decades ago. He was adopted by the Luminals, a super team from Zarth 3. During an incursion from the dark multiverse, the Luminals were infected with the anti-death equation by Abyss. The only surviving Luminal was Beox, a Green Lantern from Earth 0. How did a Green Lantern get to Earth 2 from Earth 0? He's a box. He was mailed here. See? A perfectly reasonable explanation. The comrades then called Space Cabby and got up out of there. Turns out Cabby was himself fleeing the incursion. His last fare had been infected with the anti-death equation. It was then that they extricated Rick Starr, the last space ranger whose father and girlfriend aimed to infect him. Circumstances made them comrades. Unemployment made them the Cosmic Avengers. Recently, Abyss turned his attention to Earth toward one Robert Reynolds. Oh, and Thog was defeated by Spider-Ham and Marvel Bunny. And, in case you were wondering, both Bugs and Mickey were slaughtered. And I mean slaughtered. Bugs had his all stretched out and wrapped around his neck and stuffed down his throat and out his Mickey had his ripped right open and folded over his head, and his carcass smelled like for days, even inside a chilly morgue drawer. And I won't even tell you what sick was found on their laptops, dear reader. Evening. 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 It was the Halloween that almost wasn't. Obsessed with Bram Stoker's Dracula, the vampire sorcerer Count Romanoff began masquerading as the titular character. When Halloween evolved into the modern holiday, the villain would indulge in a bloody feast of Samhain. All the while, Romanoff began hearing a faint, breathy whisper, a recitation of the word evening. Intrigued, the sorcerer studied all esoteric lore, seeking the subject. Eventually, Romanoff was driven mad as the constant whisper became louder. It was then he realized the recitation was an instruction sent throughout the multiverse by a spirit from the dark multiverse. And so, as instructed, Romanoff began a recitation of his own, and Samhain appeared, the spirit of Halloween itself. He had been trapped on Earth 46 and required an accomplice to escape. Samhain called all his little ones from across the black to indulge and revel in the holiday. But the holiday required more than just ghosts. It required all the Halloween monsters for a trick-or-treat like no other. And so, Samhain called 7 mainstays of the modern holiday. Nkantu was born during the Green Sahara. His father, Tchombi, was the leader of the Swahili people, known as the Lion Tribe. The Swahili were feared as immortal warriors best left alone. They resided in the Atlas Mountains, where an Eternium meteorite irradiated all flora and fauna. Nkantu's people eventually skirmished with the Kmetites, whose nth metal weapons negated Eternium. The few remaining tribesmen were taken as immortal slaves. However, the Kmetite ruler, Aram Set, expired. For internment, his immortal slaves were to be executed with poison laced with nth metal as a glorification of his reign. Instead, Nkantu signaled a rebellion, and the would-be executioners were slaughtered. However, Nkantu was captured, force-fed the nth metal-laced poison, and mummified whole. While interred in a locked sarcophagus, Nkantu became undead, his body now tuned to the anti-death equation. Heir to the Garth Manor coffee plantation, Simon Garth paid no mind to the supposed family curse. Every generation, a family member would go missing. This phenomenon fueled many an urban legend. Garth paid neither the phenomenon nor the legend any mind. That was until he was abducted by a cult whose members were descended from the original plantation slaves. Simon was sacrificed with control of his body rendered to whoever held the amulet of Damballa. That heirloom had been etched with the anti-death equation. As was tradition, Simon was to become an undead enforcer of Damballa. However, Layla Cable, daughter of the cult patriarch, recognized Simon as a man who once intervened on her behalf during an attack. Stealing the amulet, Layla fled with Simon. Wondering what would happen if a zombie wielded the amulet, Layla adorned the undead Simon with the heirloom. While capable of only basic thought, Simon was now endowed with free will. Halloween, 1966. June Moon was a comic book artist who accepted an invitation to a party at Castle Damore. While wandering the castle, to avoid her date, she stumbled upon a secret chamber. Seriously? Was the castle conceived and built in America? If so, that might make sense. But if the castle had been relocated from Europe to America, the secret chamber would not be a secret. Regardless, June unlocked the chamber and freed an emaciated Amora of Asgard. She had been imprisoned in a pocket dimension, evading a minotaur. As what happens? Too weak to channel her powers, Amora begged Moon to become her conduit. Amora empowered the healthier June to repel the minotaur. All the youngster had to say was, Enchantress. Amora departed, too weak to break the conduit with June. Afterward, Moon's strange lifelong adventure began as the Switcheroo Witcheroo. Project M was about more than mere robotic prosthetics. During World War II, Professor Zurin copied the brain of the project namesake and created Joe, the first GI robot. Armed with a body of adamantium and a brain of Sentio Metallico, Joe was built to be an unstoppable war machine. However, GI Robot was an empathetic soul who avoided violence whenever possible. Defective, Joe was requisitioned for the scrap heap. Incognito, the clever robot went AWOL to fight another day. Yo, Joe! The savage tale of Ted Sallis ended and began in Citrusville. Sallis was an off-the-books contractor for Stag Industries. Tasked by Project SO2, Sallis was to invent cures for mineral poisoning from creation metals. His work was proctored by DEO handler Ellen Brandt. Ted, whose dance card was always rather blank, was taken aback at Ellen's admiration and affection. And so, Sallis experienced first love. Secretly, Ellen was a double agent for Spiral. The real Ellen Brandt had been replaced by a doppelganger using synthetic skin and hypno implants. Her mission was to funnel all research to Spiral and to frame Sallis. However, when Stag's troubleshooter, Rex Mason, exposed Ellen's duplicity, she held Ted hostage at gunpoint. Luckily, Ted escaped with a sample of 10th metal. Unfortunately, Ellen triggered an incinerating explosion of the lab, the research, and the body of the actual Ellen Brandt. The shockwaves launched Ted and the 10th metal into the swamp. From that churning brine emerged the Man-Thing. Adam Frankenstein was created to be an avatar of the black. However, his initial childlike nature endured him to the endless life itself. And so Adam rebelled against his nature to protect children, endangered species, and new life forms. Along the way, Adam stared down the abyss that is the black. After being gifted weapons by both gods and immortals from across the two multiverses, Adam was recruited by Father Time to become the first agent of Shade. The Russov family immigrated from Transylvania to Mexico to escape an ancestral curse. Centuries later, Jacob Russov was researching family lore when he came upon an ancestral diary gifted to him by a Transylvanian nobleman. Upon opening the diary, Jacob read a lycanthropy curse. The Transylvanian then appeared to reveal he was Count Romanov, aka Dracula, and the diary was, in fact, the mythical Darkhold. It was Romanov who had cursed Jacob's ancestors out of spite. Under the aliases Jake Gomez, Jake Lightman, and Jack Russell, Jacob preyed upon a cure until Shade dispatched Moon Knight to recruit him. Jacob enabled Shade to infiltrate Samhain's Halloween horror show. The hypnotized horrors regained lucidity and banished Samhain back into the dark multiverse. As for Romanov, he entombed himself inside the Darkhold. Afterward, the Halloween horrors were recruited by Shade as the Creature Commandos. Justice is blind, but it can see in the dark. Young Maximilian Quincy Coleridge witnessed his philanthropic parents murdered. Max funded a global manhunt with his import-export inheritance. During his quest, Coleridge would exchange patronage for expertise. Among his many mentors were Desmond Powell, Clay Stoner, Mary Frances Cassidy, and Kathleen Duquesne. While imprisoned for vigilantism, Coleridge was approached by Balinor, who presented himself as a cultist of Kali. He gestured for Max's release and instructed the lost quester to follow a trail of Aparigita flowers to a hypnotically hidden temple. There, Coleridge met Balinor's daughter, Dalindra, who tested him and afterwards sponsored him. Mentored by Balinor, Maximilian learned of theatricality and deception, of how to engage 600 men, to become invisible through patience and agility, to mind his surroundings, and to accept that training is nothing, that will is everything. Eventually, Maximilian perfected his craft. He was then summoned for an audience with Raga Shah. It had been generations since a new Thuggee was summoned before the Grand Guru. During the audience, Coleridge was branded with the kiss of Kali. Blinded, Maximilian discovered his remaining senses were mystically enhanced, his words endowed with the power of suggestion, and that dark force bled from his shadow. Perhaps his most intriguing new ability was psychometry. Christening himself the Shroud, Coleridge renewed his quest. But Balinor warned his psychometric pupil that there are things in this world best left untouched. Ancient Arabia. An escaped slave is sunburnt, parched, and ready to die as a free woman when a vision ignites her will to live. What she thinks to be a mirage is the shaft of a lost crystal temple. Inside is cooler air and plentiful water. And there is one other blessing. An inextinguishable crimson flame warms the cold desert night. The flame is even a beacon to lure in nocturnal predators to become her prey. After a childhood of poverty and a youth of enslavement, she is safe. She professes her gratitude, then her sorrow, then her rage. Her father sold her. Along with dreams of food and freedom were also dreams of vengeance. And then the flame explodes, enveloping Zara in flickering wings. She is now one with the crimson flame. She is now a flaming bird of red rage. She is a melter of chains, an incinerator of mankind's failures. And all her followers will burn. They will burn. For Zara.